The story of Carmen, her son Alejandro, and daughter Solve.in this special video. I'm going to uncover 9 things you should never say to your children, and how setting certain boundaries can greatly benefit their growth and well-being. The last point will definitely surprise you. But before we dive in, I want you to listen closely to this story. It holds the key to the important lesson we'll explore today. Carmen, a 40-year-old mother, had always believed that complete honesty was the foundation of a strong, united family. With 2 teenage children, she stood by her mantra, no secrets, no problems. But what happens when honesty starts cutting both ways? Imagine you're holding an open book, each page revealing a piece of your life. Carmen thought her children should read every single page. But soon, she realized that some chapters are better left unread. What family secret is about to turn Carmen's world upside down? Before we get started, if you find value in this content, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an update. Let's begin with the first lesson, the danger of oversharing family finances. Have you ever considered how a single number in a bank account could shift the entire dynamic of a household? You might be surprised by the answer. Think of your bank account like a pressure cooker. If you open it at the wrong time, everything explodes. That's exactly how Carmen felt when she accidentally shared her financial struggles with her children. Almost immediately, the atmosphere at home shifted. The kids began worrying about things that were far beyond their control. According to child psychologist Dr. Juan Perez, children simply don't have the emotional maturity to handle complex financial matters. Oversharing can lead to unnecessary stress, and Carmen experienced this firsthand. So, how can you discuss money with your kids without overwhelming them? It's like cooking a soup using the right ingredients in the right amounts. Too much salt, or in this case, too much information, can ruin the dish. Research from the University of Cambridge shows that children start forming financial habits as early as age 7. At that age, I still thought money grew on trees. But this finding emphasizes the importance of teaching kids about finances in an age-appropriate way. Carmen learned that instead of sharing exact figures, it was better to focus on teaching principles. Saying, "We live within our means," rather than, "We can't afford that," or "We save for the future," instead of "We're broke," can make all the difference. It's like giving them a map without showing them every obstacle along the journey. The renowned Swiss psychologist Jean Piaget once said, "The principal goal of education is to create people capable of doing new things, not just repeating what past generations have done." When it comes to finances, this means teaching our children to be smart with money, not to burden them with our financial challenges. Carmen decided to make learning about money fun by introducing financial game nights. Monopoly became an unexpected educational tool. Through the game, her kids learned about budgeting, saving, and investing without the emotional weight of the family's actual financial situation. But what should you do when kids ask direct questions about the family's finances? Carmen learned a clever approach, answering questions with questions. For example, when her children asked about money, she responded with, "Why do you think that's important to know?" Or, "What do you think about our financial situation?" This technique, known as guided reflection, helped uncover her children's concerns without oversharing. Nobel Prize-winning economist Richard Thaler once said, "If you want people to do something, make it easy." Carmen applied this principle by simplifying her financial talks. Instead of diving into percentages and interest rates, She used relatable analogies. Saving was like planting a seed, and debt was like digging a hole. Suddenly, finances weren't as intimidating. Remember, it's not about hiding the truth from our children, but about shielding them from worries that aren't theirs to carry. As philosopher Khalil Gibran wisely said, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. Our role is to guide them, not burden them with our problems." 2. Couple conflicts, a taboo subject for children. Relationship conflicts, a topic parents often avoid discussing with their kids. If you thought keeping financial matters under wraps was challenging, brace yourself for this one. There's a delicate balance between being honest with your children and inadvertently turning them into unpaid therapists. Where do you think that line is? Imagine for a moment that your home is a ship sailing across the ocean. The parents are the captains and the children are the crew. Now, what happens if the captains start arguing about the ship's direction in front of the entire crew? Chaos, naturally. That's precisely what unfolded in Carmen's house one night. After a heated argument with her husband about their work schedules, Carmen made the mistake of venting to her children, "Your father is never home." In her frustration, she sought their sympathy, but she didn't realize she'd just opened an emotional Pandora's box. Dr. John Gottman, renowned for his research on marital relationships, warns that when parents involve their children in their disputes, the kids feel anxious and torn. Carmen learned this firsthand when her children started showing signs of stress, difficulty sleeping, and trouble at school. So, how can parents resolve their conflicts without dragging the kids into it? It's like juggling fire. It takes skill, practice, and above all, caution. Child psychologist Dr. Ross Campbell advises that parents should always present a united front, even when they disagree. Carmen adopted what she called the closed-door rule at home. Any serious discussions between her and her husband now took place behind closed doors, far from the curious ears of their children. It's like holding a boardroom meeting minus the coffee and snacks. But what about when kids inevitably pick up on the tension? This is where strategic honesty comes in. Carmen learned to say things like, "Mom and Dad are having a disagreement, but we're working it out." It's like giving them an executive summary without all the messy details. She also discovered the value of a family happy hour. After privately resolving their differences, she and her husband would spend quality time with the kids. It's like dessert after a tough meal. Sweet, comforting, and it brings everyone closer. What should you do when children ask direct questions about their parents' disagreements? Carmen found it effective to respond with reflective questions of her own. Why do you think we're arguing? Or how does that make you feel? This method, known as active listening, helps reveal the children's concerns without revealing unnecessary details. Famed pediatrician Dr. Benjamin Spock once said, "Children are great observers, but poor interpreters." That's why it's crucial for parents to provide context and reassurance, without turning their kids into confidants or referees. Carmen and her husband also started having regular date nights, not only to strengthen their relationship, but to show their kids that love and commitment take effort and dedication. It's like maintaining a car. Take care of it regularly, and it's far less likely to break down in the middle of the road. 3. The past best left behind. Even with regular upkeep, some parts of the engine are best left untouched. Have you ever considered which memories from your past might dramatically change how your children perceive you? Think of your life as a photo album. Some pictures are meant to be shared, while others are better kept locked away in a drawer. Carmen learned this lesson the hard way when she decided to share a story from her youth with her teenage children. It all started on a quiet Sunday evening as the family gathered around the dinner table. When her eldest son, Alejandro, mentioned that he was struggling to choose a career path, Carmen, wanting to inspire him, decided to share an anecdote from her college years. "When I was your age," she began, "I was on the verge of dropping out of college. I even forged a signature to change majors without my parents knowing." What Carmen didn't expect was the shocked expressions on her children's faces. Psychologist Carl Jung once said, "The greatest impact on a child is not what their parents say, but what they do." In this case, Carmen's words had the same weight as her actions. The image her children had of her as a responsible, ethical mother was shaken. Alejandro, clearly disturbed, asked, "Mom, how can you tell us to be honest when you did something like that?" The question hit Carmen like a cold splash of reality. In her attempt at transparency, she had inadvertently undermined her own moral authority. Dr. Daniel Siegel, a respected child psychiatrist, cautions that parents must tread carefully when sharing stories from their past. What may seem like a valuable lesson to us can be confusing or even damaging to our children, and Carmen learned this firsthand. But how can parents discuss their past in a constructive way without revealing inappropriate details? It's like walking a tightrope. It takes balance, focus, and, most importantly, knowing where to step. Carmen discovered that the key is to focus on the lessons learned rather than the gritty details. Instead of telling the entire story, she could have said something like, "There was a time when I doubted my path, but I learned the importance of perseverance and honesty." Philosopher George Santayana once said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." But in the family context, perhaps we could adjust that to those who share their past wisely help their children build a better future. Carmen also realized the power of edited stories. Just as a film director cuts scenes to maintain the essence of the movie, parents can offer age-appropriate versions of their experiences. It's like serving a gourmet dish. Care is required in both preparation and presentation. Famed pediatrician Dr. T. Barry Brizilton once said, "Children don't need perfect parents. They need honest and present parents." This doesn't mean sharing everything, but being authentic in our interactions. Carmen and her husband decided to start family story nights. Rather than focus on potentially problematic personal anecdotes, they shared stories about their ancestors, family traditions, and moments of collective pride. It was like building a bridge between the past and the future without the bumps of personal mistakes along the way. 4. Dangerous comparisons. Talking about other children. Have you ever considered that a seemingly innocent compliment could turn into a lasting burden for your child? Imagine that words are like seeds. Some grow into beautiful flowers, while others become weeds, stifling growth. Carmen was about to unknowingly plant a seed that would take root in her son's emotional garden. It all began one warm summer afternoon. Carmen was chatting with a friend as their children played in the yard. "Look how well little Marcos plays soccer," her friend remarked. Wanting to be polite, Carmen responded, "Yes, he's really talented. I wish my Alejandro had that kind of skill in sports." What she didn't realize was that Alejandro, her 10-year-old son, was within earshot and overheard every word. The Greek philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens that disturbs us, but our interpretation of it." In this case, Carmen's offhand comment about Alejandro's abilities would soon deeply affect her son. Child psychologist Dr. Haim Ginott cautioned that comparisons can breed resentment and erode self-esteem, and Carmen soon witnessed this truth firsthand. In the days following, she noticed that Alejandro became more withdrawn, less enthusiastic about the activities he once enjoyed. Oh, how can we encourage our children without falling into the trap of comparisons? It's like walking through a minefield. Care, attention, and thoughtful steps are required. A Stanford University study revealed that constant comparisons can significantly impact children's academic performance, leading to heightened anxiety and lower achievements. Carmen decided to try a new approach. Rather than comparing Alejandro to other kids, she began comparing him to his past self. Remember when you couldn't kick the ball without falling over? Look how much you've improved, she would say. This technique, known as internal comparison, helps children recognize their own progress without the pressure of external benchmarks. Famous psychologist Albert Bandura once said, "People who believe in their ability to achieve results are more likely to persist in the face of obstacles." Carmen was helping Alejandro build that belief in himself. But what happens when children inevitably compare themselves to others? That's where the concept of a growth mindset, developed by psychologist Carol Dweck, comes into play. Carmen learned to say things like, "Marcos has had a lot of practice in soccer. If you'd like to improve, we can spend more time practicing together." This approach is like offering them a ladder rather than just pointing out how high the fruit hangs. Italian educator Maria Montessori once said, "The child is the father of the man." When applied to comparisons, this means that how we treat our children today will shape how they treat themselves tomorrow. Carmen also discovered the value of celebrating small victories. Every time Alejandro made an effort or showed improvement, she made sure to acknowledge it. "I love how you tried hard on that pass. Even if it wasn't perfect," she would tell him. "It's like watering a plant with the right care. It will eventually bloom." But what should you do when other adults make comparisons in front of your children? Carmen learned to gently intervene. "Every child has their own talents," she'd say with a smile. This technique, known as positive redirection, helps shift the focus of the conversation without creating tension. Psychologist Howard Gardner, known for his theory of multiple intelligences, reminds us that it's not about how smart you are, but rather how you are smart. Carmen embraced this principle, celebrating the unique strengths and abilities in her children. Before moving on to the fifth thing you should never say to your kids, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel with the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. And if you love this type of content as much as I do, comment, "I love these stories." Also, let me know what you'd like to see in future videos. I read all your comments. Let's continue learning and growing together. 5. The myth of parental perfection. Imagine you're a juggler in a circus. You're keeping all the balls in the air, and the crowd applauds. But suddenly, bam, one slips and hits the floor. Does the show fall apart? Not necessarily. In fact, that dropped ball could be the most genuine and memorable part of the performance. Carmen, our protagonist, found herself in a similar situation. For years, she had carefully crafted the image of the perfect mother, always patient, always wise, always in control. She was her children's personal superhero, capable of fixing any problem with a smile. But, as we all know, even superheroes have their moments of weakness. One day, while preparing dinner, Carmen accidentally cut herself with a knife. It wasn't serious, but it was enough to make her let out a curse that would make a sailor blush. Her kids, who were in the kitchen, froze Mom swearing. Mom making a mistake? It was like discovering that Superman wears his underwear over his suit. Psychologist Dr. Brad Bushman points out that children need to see their parents as human. It helps them develop realistic expectations about themselves and others. So, instead of brushing it off or apologizing endlessly, Carmen chose to turn the moment into a teaching opportunity. "Guys," she said, "Mom makes mistakes sometimes, and that's okay. What matters is how we handle those mistakes." This revelation was like throwing open the windows in a stuffy room. The fresh breeze of authenticity flooded into her relationship with her kids. The pressure to be perfect dissolved because even Mom wasn't perfect. Dr. Bren Brown, researcher and author, emphasizes that vulnerability isn't about winning or losing. It's about having the courage to show up and be seen without any guarantees of the outcome. Carmen embraced that courage, and the result was unexpected. Her children started opening up about their own fears and mistakes. Little Alejandro confessed that he sometimes felt dumb at school, while teenager Sofia admitted she was worried about not fitting in with her peers. These once unthinkable conversations became part of the family's routine. But how do you show vulnerability without losing authority? It's like dancing the tango it takes, the right blend of strength and flexibility. Carmen found balance by saying things like, "I don't have all the answers, but we can figure them out together." This simple phrase conveys humility and a willingness to learn without relinquishing her role as a guide. Child psychologist Dr. Chaim Ginott once said, "Children are like corks bobbing in a sea of adult emotions. If parents pretend to be perfect, children feel like corks struggling to stay afloat in a storm of impossible expectation." Carmen decided to create what she called family growth moments. When she made a mistake, she would openly share it and discuss with her kids how she could improve next time. It was like having a feedback session at work, but with more hugs and fewer PowerPoint slides. And what about when children question their parents' decisions? Carmen learned to respond with honesty. "Sometimes adults get it wrong too, but we do the best we can with the information we have." This kind of transparency, far from undermining her authority, actually strengthened it. Her kids saw her as a real leader, authentic, not infallible or untouchable. The famous pediatrician Dr. Benjamin Spock once said, "Trust yourself. You know more than you think." Carmen discovered that showing vulnerability didn't mean she was doubting herself. It meant she was confident in her ability to learn and grow right alongside her children. 6. Family secrets: when to reveal and when to protect. Imagine your family as a house of cards, where each card symbolizes a truth or a shared experience. What happens when one of those cards threatens to topple the entire structure? Carmen was about to confront this very dilemma. It all began on a Sunday afternoon when Carmen was sorting through the attic, surrounded by dusty boxes and forgotten memories. Among them, she stumbled upon a yellowed letter that rocked her world. To her shock, she discovered that her grandfather, whom the family revered as a war hero, had actually been a deserter. Dr. Evan Imber Black, an expert on family secrets, explains that such secrets can serve both protective and destructive roles. The challenge lies in understanding their effects on the family system. Carmen found herself balancing on a tightrope between honesty and safeguarding her family's legacy. Should she disclose this information to her children? On one hand, she had always championed the importance of truth. On the other, Did she not have a responsibility to shield her grandfather's memory and protect her children's innocence? Philosopher Immanuel Kant posited that lying is inherently wrong. But does this principle apply to family secrets? Carmen was uncertain, so she turned to her friend Sophia, a child psychologist. Children are more resilient than we often give them credit for, Sophia advised. Many times, it's our own fears that prevent us from being honest with them. Carmen recalled the words of author Mitch Albom, who remarked that family secrets are akin to an invisible cancer. They fester and grow in the shadows. Was she allowing this secret to spiral out of control? After much contemplation, Carmen chose to disclose the truth to her children. But how could she do so without shattering the image they held of their great-grandfather? This is where effective communication became crucial. Carmen gathered her children and began, "Do you remember all the stories I've told you about your great-grandfather? Well, there's more to that story than we knew." She explained that her grandfather, like all of us, was a complex individual who made difficult choices during challenging times. Despite his mistakes, he remained a significant figure in their family history. Her children's reactions surprised her. Instead of feeling let down, they expressed curiosity and empathy. "Wow, Mom," Alejandro said. "That must have been really hard for him. Do you think he regretted it?" Dr. Dan Siegel, a child psychiatrist, emphasizes that sharing intricate family narratives equips children with the tools to comprehend the complexities of human existence. Carmen realized that revealing this secret did not tarnish her children's perception of their great-grandfather. Instead, it enriched it, providing them the chance to explore themes like courage, fear, and forgiveness. However, Carmen also recognized that some secrets could be genuinely harmful. She learned that assessing the potential impact of a secret is crucial. Certain secrets, such as those related to mental health issues or addictions within the family, are important to disclose so that children can understand their own medical histories. As psychologist Carl Jung famously stated, "What you resist persists, what you accept transforms." By acknowledging and sharing this family secret, Carmen turned what could have been a lingering shadow into a valuable opportunity for growth. Nonetheless, not every secret needs to be laid bare. Privacy also holds its rightful place within the family. The challenge is to differentiate between secrets that safeguard individual privacy and those that could significantly affect the family's well-being. Carmen developed what she called the impact test. Before sharing a secret, she would ask herself, "How will this affect my children? Will it offer them valuable insights or merely cause unnecessary distress?" Philosopher Soren Kierkegaard once wrote, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." Carmen understood that unveiling secrets from the past could help her children navigate their futures more wisely. 7. Unexpressed expectations. A double-edged sword. Have you ever pondered how the words left unspoken can shape the trajectory of someone's life? Imagine your thoughts as invisible balloons floating above your children's heads. Each hope, every dream you hold for them, even if never voiced, somehow finds its way into their minds. It may sound like something out of a science fiction novel, yet it's closer to reality than we might think. Carmen was about to uncover how her unexpressed expectations had been quietly steering her eldest son, Alejandro, in a direction she hadn't intended. It all began when Al, in his senior year of high school, announced his desire to pursue art in college. Carmen was left in shock, not because she disagreed with his choice, but because she had always envisioned him stepping into the business world, following in her own footsteps. Psychologist Abraham Maslow, renowned for his hierarchy of needs, once stated, "What a man can be, he must be." But what happens when a parent's aspirations for their child don't align with the child's own desires? Carmen realized that, without even realizing it, she had been projecting her own ambitions onto Alejandro. Although she had never explicitly stated that she wanted him to become a businessman, her offhand comments about success in the business realm and her excitement whenever Alejandro demonstrated mathematical prowess had sown the seeds of expectation. Dr. Chaim Ginott cautioned that parental expectations act as water for plants, too little, and the child wilts, too much, and they can drown. Carmen questioned whether she had unintentionally flooded Alejandro with her unspoken hopes. So, how can we guide our children without overwhelming them with our expectations? It's akin to walking a tightrope. It demands balance, focus, and above all, the wisdom to know when to step back. Carmen chose to have an open and honest conversation with Alejandro. She explained that it had never been her intention to pressure him, but she recognized that her unexpressed expectations might have influenced him. "Son," she said, "I want you to know that your happiness matters more to me than any career you choose." This moment was like throwing open a window in a stuffy room. The refreshing air of authenticity swept through the relationship between Carmen and Alejandro. The young man confessed that he had considered pursuing a business degree merely to satisfy his mother, even though his true passion had always been art. Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre famously said, "Man is condemned to be free." In the realm of parenting, this can mean that children are destined to carve their own paths. Carmen realized her role was not to dictate that path, but to illuminate it, helping Alejandro see all the options before him. But how can we express our hopes for our children without overwhelming them? Carmen learned to apply what she termed the mirror method. Rather than imposing her own desires, she reflected the passions and talents she observed in her children. "Alejandro, I love how you express your ideas through art. Have you thought about how you might cultivate that talent in the future?" Psychologist Carl Rogers, the pioneer of person-centered therapy, believed that individuals inherently possess the capacity and drive to mature. Thus, the role of parents should be to facilitate, not direct, that natural growth. Carmen also initiated what she called dream conversations. Once a month, she would sit down with her children to discuss their aspirations, fostering an environment free from judgment or direction. These conversations became a sanctuary where the kids could explore their interests without the burden of parental expectations. However, what happens when our children's dreams evoke fear within us? Carmen learned to navigate her own anxieties and uncertainties. When Alejandro expressed his desire to travel the world before starting college, instead of voicing her apprehension, Carmen replied, "That sounds exciting. How do you think that experience could enrich your art?" The renowned pediatrician Dr. Benjamin Spock once said, "Trust yourself. You know more than you think." Carmen discovered that this trust extended not just to herself, but also to her children and their decisions. 8. The taboo of sibling preferences. As Carmen navigated the complexities of parenting with newfound assurance, she was unaware that she was about to encounter one of parenthood's greatest taboos. What if I told you that your words could unintentionally create invisible rifts between your children? Carmen was soon to learn this unsettling reality in an unexpected manner. Picture this: a parent's love is akin to a cake. In theory, there should be enough to go around for everyone, right? But what occurs when we unwittingly begin serving different portions? This is the dilemma of parental favoritism, a concern as ancient as humanity itself. It all started on what seemed like a normal Sunday afternoon. Carmen was busy in the kitchen preparing dinner while her children, Alejandro and Sofia, tackled their homework at the table. Without a second thought, Carmen casually remarked, "Alejandro, I wish you were as organized as your sister. Look how tidy her notebooks are." The silence that followed was deafening. Alejandro's gaze fell, clearly wounded, while Sofia fidgeted in her seat. Realizing her blunder too late, Carmen attempted to amend her mistake, but the damage had already been done. A study from the University of California highlighted that parental favoritism, even when subtle or unintended, can leave lasting scars on self-esteem and sibling relationships. Researchers discovered that children who perceived favoritism towards their siblings were more likely to experience behavioral issues and struggles in future relationships. But how can we sidestep the favoritism trap when it can sometimes be challenging not to notice the differences among our children? It's akin to trying not to think of a pink elephant. The more you try, the more prominent it becomes. Dr. Daniel Siegel, a renowned child psychiatrist, advocates for an approach known as mindful parenting. Rather than denying our preferences or the differences that exist, we should acknowledge them internally and then deliberately choose how to respond. It's not about achieving perfection, Siegel says, but about being aware and repairing our missteps when they occur. Determined to adopt this strategy, Carmen gathered her children and said, "Kids, I made a mistake by comparing you. Each of you is unique and valuable in your own right. I apologize if I've ever made you feel less important." This conversation opened the door to a more profound dialogue. Alejandro admitted that he sometimes felt undervalued, while Sofia revealed the pressure she felt to be the organized one. Carmen recognized that her comments, although well-intentioned, had been feeding these insecurities. The Greek philosopher Plato once said, "You can discover more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation." Inspired by this insight, Carmen initiated family game nights, allowing each child to shine in their unique strengths. Alejandro proved to be a brilliant strategist in board games, while Sofia astounded everyone with her creativity in word games. But what happens when the differences between siblings are genuinely pronounced? Dr. Haim Janot, a pioneer in parent-child communication, suggests praising the effort rather than the talent. Instead of saying, "You're so smart," Carmen learned to express, "I'm impressed with how hard you worked on that project." Carmen also recognized the importance of dedicating one-on-one time with each child, tailoring activities to their individual interests. With Alejandro, she explored art museums, while with Sofia, she cherished afternoons in the kitchen. These moments not only fortified their individual connections, but also diminished the need for comparisons. Psychologist Alfred Adler, known for his birth order theory, reminds us that each child in a family exists in a different environment. Carmen understood that her role was not to treat her children the same, but to ensure that each felt equally loved and valued. 9. The power of wise silence. Carmen had learned to navigate the turbulent waters of parenting, but what she was about to discover would make everything she had previously learned seem like a mere splash at the shore. Are you ready to explore the profound depths of silence? Imagine your words as stones tossed into a pond, each creating ripples that extend far beyond your view. But what occurs if you cease throwing stones and simply observe the still water? This is the essence of wise silence, the most powerful secret Carmen uncovered on her journey as a mother. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Say nothing which is not necessary." This may sound straightforward, but in a world inundated with information and the pressure to always have the right answers, silence has become an undervalued art. Carmen came to this realization one afternoon while watching her children play in the garden. Just as she was about to step in during a disagreement between them, something stopped her. What if I simply observe? To her surprise, the children resolved their conflict on their own. It felt as if she had unlocked a hidden superpower, the power of saying nothing. Psychologist Carl Rogers, a pioneer in client-centered therapy, once stated, "The greatest gift you can give someone is your undivided attention." Carmen began applying this principle at home. Rather than rushing in with advice or solutions, she chose to listen, and something magical began to unfold. Her children started opening up more, sharing their thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment or interruption. Carmen became their confidants, not for what she said, but for what she chose not to say. How can we integrate this wise silence into our daily lives? Here's a practical guide, the 5C rule. Before responding to anything, count to 5 in your mind. This brief pause allows you to consider whether your words are truly necessary. The mirror technique. Instead of voicing your opinion, reflect on what your child is expressing. For example, say, "It seems you're feeling frustrated with that task." This helps them process their emotions. The power of questions. Rather than providing answers, ask questions like, "What do you think you could do in that situation?" This encourages critical thinking and problem solving. Shared silence moments. Set aside time for quiet activities with your children, such as drawing or simply sitting together in the garden. Shared silence can be as impactful as deep conversations. The reflective pause. When your child shares something significant, take a moment before responding. Say something like, "That sounds important. Let me think about it for a moment." This shows that you value their words and are considering them thoughtfully. A study conducted by the University of California revealed that children whose parents practiced active listening and reflective silence exhibited higher levels of self-esteem and communication skills. It's as if the parents' silence created a nurturing space for their children's inner voices to flourish. Carmen noticed remarkable changes within her family. Alejandro, who had once been reserved, began sharing more about his art projects, while Sofia, who used to constantly seek her mother's approval, started making decisions with greater confidence. Carmen's silence had cultivated a garden where her children could grow and thrive at their own pace. But what happens when you truly need to express something? The philosopher Epictetus reminds us we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. When Carmen did speak, her words carried more significance because they were carefully chosen and timely. Implementing wise silence doesn't mean becoming a mute statue. It's more akin to being a conductor, knowing when to make a subtle gesture and when to allow the music to flow on its own. Sometimes, the most eloquent silence is a knowing smile or a warm hug. Remember, finding the balance between honesty and protection is essential. It's not about concealing the truth, but presenting it in a way that allows our children to process and grow from it. Reflect on your family's communication. Are you creating a space where your children feel safe to express themselves? Silence can communicate as well. Sometimes, a knowing glance or a comforting hug speaks volumes more than 1,000 words. If you've made it this far, write in the comments, "I deserve a happy life," so I can recognize those who persevered to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more content like this in the future. Share this video with your loved ones so they can begin implementing this wisdom today. If you'd like to support the channel, consider becoming an exclusive member. I'll leave a link in the pinned comment for you to download my new ebook. Thank you for your support. Now, click on this video to continue nourishing your mind with wisdom.